Okay, we are jumping in right now to part 3 of our short course on business acquisitions. Guys, let's focus. So we've been talking about acquiring businesses, and this is going to be a quick run through of what it would look like once you have decided to buy a business, how it would look like, just a brief intro. Okay, let's take a look at the introduction. Yes, we are recording. So welcome if you're joining us online or virtually or reviewing. So you would decide, we're going to talk about all these points in further slides, just a very brief overview of everything. Decide what you want, what type of business, if it's the right time, and if it's overall the right decision for you. We're going to talk about that soon. You want to get your funding in order. We're going to talk about all these steps again. Then you will commence the search. You'll make an official offer called a letter of intent. If you don't mind just sitting properly, thank you. You will do then due diligence, including accounting, legal, physical inspection in most cases, review various documents. Finally, if that all goes well, you will get to closing. After the business is closed and you are the owner, the seller will train you for a couple of months. That is part of the agreement. You then, that's really the same thing, but you take over. It's now your business, you're running it. And this not always happens, but you may implement any growth strategies or desired changes, or you can hire a manager or just continue to run the business yourself. So that is, in a very brief overview, what does it look like? So again, you're going through your career. There's many types of people, situations where you decided to look into buying a business, and depends on where you are. So you need to decide if now the right time for you. Does it fit? Do you have other opportunities? You've decided you want to make a firm decision. Sorry, before we go to that point, that this is the right time. There's not crazy things going on in your life, your personal life, your business life, and there's no other career opportunities, right? You want to know that this is your absolute best opportunity. You want to have conviction in this process. We'll talk more about that soon. It can't be where it's, oh, I'm just exploring a business and maybe I get a promotion at work and cancel the whole thing. It can't be like that. You have to have very high level of conviction, because we'll talk about that soon. Because it takes a lot of work and twists and turns in the process. It's not like buying something on Amazon. It's very much not like that. It's probably one of the hardest things to buy, probably harder than real estate even. You want to have some at least management experience, at the very least some type of relevant work experience. And that's not even if you're buying if you're buying a technology business, for example, we talked about this, you want to have tech industry, but even if you're buying something relatively simple, like a convenience store, a laundromat, you still want to have some management experience. So let's say from personal experience, I have never had the title as a manager, but at my work, I've done property management, right? So I've managed people, I've managed deadlines, goals, things like that. So that would count. And at my job in Jets, I've managed different sub projects. So that's fine. That should be fine unless you're buying a really complicated business where they may want you to have management experience for a bit more years. But you want to have some work experience. That way you can prove to yourself, to your investors, to banks, that you are capable of doing this. A lot of it rests really on you. Again, you want this to be, once you jump in, it's one thing to go search and see what's out there and do research. But once you decide, I want to do this, you really have to have conviction and be motivated to do it. It can't just be, oh, I'm looking into buying business and maybe getting a job and maybe getting this and going into, it can't be 5 things at once. Right. You should not be doing that at the same time, because this is going to take all your attention. We'll talk. We're not really touching on if you could do it while holding down a full-time job. I think it's hard, but you could do it. But it has to be your option, because it's going to take you need a lot of self-motivation to do this. So it has to be like, you have to feel like this is my future. You would want to have done a SWOT, which is just basically your strengths and weaknesses and your personality, right? So we talked 2 lessons ago in the intro. I spoke personally. I know enough about myself on a personal note to know what type of business I would get into. So if you know, for example, that you don't handle stress too well or uncertainty too well, you don't want a cyclical business that does well 1 year, doesn't do another year, and we'll talk about more different risks, but you don't want a business that, all businesses obviously have risks and change and uncertainty. You don't want something that is going to keep you up at night. Right? So something that's very seasonal. So it's something for me, because I know maybe a weakness of mine is that I'm a little susceptible to worrying about things, worrying about business conditions. I wouldn't buy a business that is the first on the chopping block if a recession comes. Maybe a travel company, a cruise company. If you have a cruise company, for example, the second you see on CNBC a recession coming, you're going to be really worried. you're not going to be as worried if you have a laundromat because it's a need, much more of a need. You don't have to worry about it as much in terms of recession. And sure about that. The more you do these SWOT and the personality assessments and know what it is getting into, the more likely you will be, if you decide to go through this process, to actually buy that business. So we'll talk about soon. A lot of people get into this. They have no idea about themselves, no idea what they want, no idea what type of business might be appropriate to them. And then that's why they give up. They don't even know what they want. So the more you do this, the SWOT, the personality, what type of business fits into you. Do you want something that's just stable and goes, or do you want a turnaround, or something that's seasonal, cyclical, that goes up and down? The more the upfront work you do in the planning stages and the assessment stages, the better it will be, and the more likely you will be to actually close something. And you'll also feel more confident about it. In order to do this, I would say as a requirement, as a personality requirement, you would need to be self-determined and be fully convinced that this is your best option, at least for right now. It can't be, oh, on Sundays I explore buying a business, but I'm also looking into my career and this and that. Once you commit to doing it, it has to be that this is what you're doing. You're not looking for career opportunities or job opportunities. This is what you're doing, because it's a lot of work. No one's on top of your back. You need to be self-motivated. So if you're someone that gives up easily, may not be the best option for you right now. If it's something you would want to do, and you know you have motivational challenges, especially over a long period of time, because this can take months, just as we'll talk about. I haven't really talked about the timeline much, but this could take 6 months, maybe even a year, to do the research and the searching and all that. If you're someone that gives up after a month, and you know that about yourself, this either may not be an option for you or may not be an option right now. You may have to work on that in yourself to go ahead with this. All right, funding. So once you've committed to this process, you've decided you want to do this, you're in, you would make sure that you have your own money enough for 5 or 10%. You would then, sorry that it didn't come in one by one, which is how it usually goes.
5 or 10.
5 or 10% of the deal down.
Get investors. Is the page we're talking?
So, right, we've talked in the past. Sorry, let's do animations, and let's do one trigger on click. Excuse me.
If you don't get investors, just the rest of the 28% you just do alone.
Yeah, you could if you have enough for 20%. So if you're buying a business for $1 million, do you have $200,000 lying around? That's the question. And what if it takes you 5 years to save up for that? Or you could just go to people and invest and get those loans, and you'll get it so much quicker, right? What if you have to wait 5 years to do that? Meanwhile, 5 years has passed by. It's a lot quicker to get loans than maybe save up. Nevertheless, you still need some of your own money to save up. So if you're buying $1 million business, 5% down is 50 grand. Most people could save up 50 grand of their own money in, a couple of years, and hopefully you're already coming into this process with some savings. All right. Did you have a question, Heshi, or all good?
Yeah, is it 5 to 10% down payment over there? Is that what it starts?
No. So we talked about the SBA covering about 80%.
Yeah.
Just to be safe.
And they don't care about how you invest personally.
They want you, ideally, they would want you to have the rest. Okay. Technically speaking, maybe half of that or a quarter of that could be really your money, and the rest could be investors or loans. I mean, technically, you could get away with putting in $1 because you can get loans and put them in your bank account and say that it's yours.
You don't have to prove it.
So you have to, the SBA is required to look for the last 3 months where that money was. So I don't know every intricacies, but I'm sure if you're smart enough and you have a guy, we'll talk about establishing contacts with SBA. If they, sign the right forms, they'll be fine. But still, you have to find an investor or a person lending money to willing to do that. There's nothing in the business world, investing world, that proves like that you have money in it. They will make them feel more comfortable. So yes, ideally. And another point, Heshi, is that the more loans, the more interest you're paying. You need to have some money down to just lower that interest payment. Otherwise, it gets really hard. Yeah, it'll be the less interest. You then want to, now, ideally, you then want to have, I'll just move this, the investors that you've talked to, you want to start making sure that they're good for the money. You keep a spreadsheet of it. How much are you good for? What interest rate? What do you agree with? And you will then I will talk about it as you get closer to closing. You will actually need them to pay that money to you or to your bank account. So you just want to start contacting them, phone calls, emails, text, whatever it is. Explain to them what you're doing. This is the type of business you want to buy. Hopefully you've narrowed it down to at least like an industry. You tell them, I want to buy a laundromat. Where, here, how's it going to work? Whatever type of business it is. And they will hopefully be willing to do it. If not, then you move on to the next person. So hopefully you can get some of those. And the rest, you will be able to... Why is it not going next? Okay. Now, in the best case scenario, actually, this is what I was referring to before. Throughout the process, somewhere along the process, ideally, this would be the squeaky clean way to do this. And we'll talk about it next when you reach out to brokers. You would ideally have a bank account, some type of separate bank account where they would even put the money in. And that way you can show proof of funds, because we're going to be talking about that next. Showing proof of funds is a way to gain credibility, to be taken seriously by brokers and sellers. We're going to talk about that next point. And even the best way to do it, some people would do it, really serious people do it, is to make an LLC showing, let's say, if I were to do a Gutnick Acquisitions. Sounds formal. And then you can have a business in that name, and you can show proof of funds that way. You want to get to know one or two lenders who work with SBA banks. Personally, I already do that. Fortunately, I have contacts who work for banks that do business lending. Try to talk to them. Say, hey, can we meet? And you sit down with them and you explain to them the situation. Tell them, this is my credit score. This is my income. This is what I'm trying to do. Can you walk me through? Are there anything I'm missing? How will I be able to get approved? Just so you have a good chance of getting approved, and they will be able to give you good advice as well. All right. You then go and search. You will browse sites such as Biz Buy Sell. Sorry, it should have all come. Let's just fix these animations up. Transitions will be done in a second. Perfect. As we looked, you start going on these. The main one is Biz Buy Sell. There's a few others, BizQuest, and there's a few others. You then contact the broker. So you, generally speaking, you don't want to deal with almost all these businesses that are really for sale will be through a broker. Brokers are good. Okay, you don't want to be dealing directly with the seller. I've personally done that, not to try to buy, but to have a conversation with, and it did go, and the conversation went well, but I realized that you need a broker who really knows what they're doing to make the whole thing happen. So you want to contact the broker, and here's where things get interesting. They get a lot of contacts and calls, and most of them end up going nowhere, right? They only get paid on commission if the business sells. And most people contracting, starting this process of searching and buying for business will not end up doing it. It's like 95% won't even do it because of the many reasons we talked about: not knowing what they want, not knowing themselves, exploring it amongst 5 other opportunities. So you have to be very serious about it if you really wanted to do it. So you're actually convincing and pitching to the broker, and by extent, eventually the seller, why they should take you seriously. They don't want to waste their time on you if you're not serious. Now, one of the best ways to do that is to say 3 things. Number 1, you say, who are you? A bit of background, and you tell them about all the research you've done. This is the type of business I would like to buy. This is how much revenue. This is how much profit. That will show them, this guy's serious. He didn't just hear something on a street bench and call me. He's thought this through. You want to be more specific. What are you looking for? What type of business are you looking for? Hi, I'm looking to call a business, somewhere in LA. That means you're not serious. You need to convince to them that you know what you want. But better yet is convince them of funding, because most people won't be able to get funding so easily. So if you can tell them, I have investors lined up, I'm pre-approved for SBA, which is another thing that's possible to do. That will help you out to get credibility and be taken seriously. And even better than that is if you can show them, if you can show the broker or the seller, hey, we're doing a presentation. Nice to see you. Thank you. All right. If you can show the broker proof of money that your investors and you have put into a separate LLC. There's nothing that's more reassuring to them that shows you seriously that you have LLC and a bank account in your name, you know, whatever acquisitions, and you have $500,000 sitting there, 200,000 sitting there. That will really give you credibility and get taken serious. So let's say there's a business, you're contacting the broker, hopefully everything's going good, you've done your introductions, you will get a bit more information than the basic info online, right? All you're going to get online in Biz Buy Sell is price, revenue, earnings, just a bit of basic stuff. You're going to get a document that they have prepared called offer memorandum. That gives more details, not everything, but a bit more. It will show revenue, profit, more consistent, more the last few years, who the customers are, and more details like that. It'll be a few pages, right? Now things are starting to get serious. Okay, you will then look at that. And if you are happy with it, you will do what's called a letter of intent, LOI. This also applies to real estate. But an LOI is basically a letter of intent. It stands for letter of intent. And it tells the broker / the seller that you are seriously interested in buying this business. It's a letter that you will sign. Sorry that this is blocking. Let's move that. Perfect. After you have done your initial due diligence, run the numbers, is very quick because you're not getting, in that offering memorandum, you're not getting tons of data. And that's not really when the due diligence is. You will make and sign a letter of intent. What does that include? Obviously, it could be different in different cases, but generally speaking, let's go to the next point. It's not a contract where you're buying the business. This is not a legal agreement that you're buying the business. It's mainly to show intent. And it does say that the seller shouldn't, if the seller signs it as well, which we'll talk about in a second, they're agreeing not to accept other offers and mainly to deal with you. Okay, so it is somewhat serious, but not like you can still walk away with no harm. It shows you're seriously considering buying a business. Now it has a price and terms. So you will set a price, okay? Remember, you will say, it's basically saying, I would like to buy a business at this price, and it will be either very similar to or above, or maybe a little bit below the offering price. Sorry, the asking price of what they are asking for. And it'll have how long is due for due diligence, how long we're going to give, and the proposed closing date. But those could technically change. So usually a couple months, 69 days for due diligence. That's very important, which we're about to talk about, and a proposed closing date. Okay, how are we doing for time? We're doing good. Hopefully your LOI is then countersigned by the other party, the broker or the buyer. Remember, they're not agreeing to just yet to sell you the business. We're way off from that. But they're agreeing that you're going to be looking into each other. You are then able to move on to the next step after the LOI is countersigned. Okay, due diligence. Sorry that they're all at once. This is an important stage. You then, now things are getting serious. You have one business you're focusing on and you hope to buy it, but only if everything checks out. You will be researching to the best of your ability that the info you have been provided in the offering memorandum and the further information you're going to get is true and the business really performs and will perform as you expect it to. You'll try to uncover any potential major problems that will prevent you from buying the business. You'll always uncover little things here and there. You want to identify major potential issues. You will then get more info. You will try to get at least 3 years of full financial records, profit and loss statements, and showing every category, the money came in, where did the money go out, and you will hire an accountant. Okay, they could charge a few thousand. You will get references, or the broker will recommend. And now it's something for you and your accountant, depending on how well you are with financials, but everyone will probably still need an accountant at some point, and you will start going through them. Now, what are you going to be looking for? Good. We talked about EBITDA. Okay, so this is probably one of the most important things. You want consistent EBITDA over the last few years, unless obviously there's a logical reason why there wouldn't be. Some industries do have better and worse years. But if you're talking about, again, a lawn mowing, a service, a pest control, a laundromat, it's things that should be stable. Probably. Where? EBITDA? No, it's EBITDA. Earnings before interest, dividends, taxes, amortization. So you want to see consistent earnings, especially mainly when you should be. A pest control company that's well established, been around, it shouldn't be having revenues of $1 million and 700,000, 1.3. It shouldn't be jumping all over the place. Because even though, yes, sometimes customers go out, you should have new customers coming in. So it should be relatively consistent. The more consistent, the better. Can't see. All right. Thank you, Heshi. All right. Heshi is the EBITDA master. Now, if earnings are growing, that's even better. But you want to have the most consistent as you can. Now, they will claim that there's a certain amount of cash in the business right now. And you will do that and not only that, you will verify profits by verifying bank statements. You will try to get bank statements from their business bank. They should match the claimed profit and EBITDA for each year. Okay. You can also have a feature where you see total deposits for a certain year, and that should match revenue, right? Think about it as logically. If I claim that my, what do you guys think should be an example? A lawn mowing company, lawn care company. If I claim that in 2021 we have revenue of 500,000, my bank account statement should show approximate money coming in of around 500,000. So if a few thousand, a little bit, 5% here and there, give or take. So you might say maybe some people can pay cash, maybe there's other accounts, but you should really see them backed up by bank statements. And same things with withdrawals. So it should match appropriately expenses, and anything left will be the profit. So you'll basically verify bank statements. You're verifying, it's basically show me the money. You claim that you made money, where is it? You claim money came in, let's see it by verified bank records and bank statements. You'll do the best job you can. Your accountant will, of course, be helpful in that. Let's check also the expenses of all categories. So you're going to get broken down. What did it cost for my insurance? What did it cost for my rent? What did it cost for my phone? If someone's showing something, accountant again will help with that, but you want to make sure that all the categories are realistic. Check if anything is suspicious. You know, $1,000 a month for a lease of a huge store may be unrealistic. Exactly. If anything's too good to be true, sometimes they'll do way too low. Okay, so you want to make sure that's all clean. Okay, add backs. So SDE, which is profit, that's the way a small business will be calculated. It stands for seller's discretionary earnings. Now, why is that term used? Discretionary includes something called an add back. So, for example, let's say we had a lease of a car that was an expense. Let's say the manager really took a salary of 100,000, but he also got perks, a lease that would have been 500 a month. He then adds that back and adds that to the business. Now you want to make sure that they're realistic, because you don't want to be adding back a crazy high salary that's unrealistic. You don't want to be adding back things that are not realistic, that are too high. Okay. So again, your accountant will help with that. You want to make sure that those are all realistic. Yeah. It's perks. So if you have a real, like a car, if you have a real $100,000, okay, let's say you have a guy saying, look, my business, I was able to earn 120,000. Why? Because I could have leased $1,000 a month car. Exactly. So as you don't pay taxes on it. But you want to just make sure that these add backs are realistic. You just want to make sure that cash that was supposed to come in, came in, cash came out, and things are just realistic. Okay. Smell check. Now, what are other types of due diligence? Okay, let's go through them point by point. You might need, if there's any specialized machinery or equipment, you might need a special consultant to check out. If you're buying some chemical testing, or you're buying a lab, or you're buying, there's too many examples to measure, you might have independent appraisers and consultants to check them out. They're usually not too expensive. If you're buying a laundromat, you might want to have a guy from a company come and check them out, see how long they are, how old they are, and a brief thing. That shouldn't be too long, shouldn't be too difficult, should not be too expensive. This is an important point, customer concentration. It is a little scary, not scary, it is a little bit risky if one or two customers let's say one customer makes up like 10% of your revenue, because what if that customer leaves? Right, when you have a store with hundreds of customers, you don't have to worry about if one or two of them leave, big deal. It's only a tiny bit. It's like diversifying. It's like diversifying your stock portfolio. If one stock of business is 20% of your portfolio, 10%, and if that goes away, you have a problem. Same thing. If you have a service business and there's only 10 customers, well, if one of them leaves or two of them leaves, you have a big problem. So you want to be very careful. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but you want to be very careful if one customer is really a huge amount of your revenues. Ideally, you wouldn't want that. Obviously, a physical inspection, you may have a few of those, but you would want to get your eyes on that plant. Sorry, whatever it is you're buying, just to check it out. You may want to do some, go in your car, go in the parking lot, see what really goes on for a few hours. You may want to do that. You want to review different documents for licenses, etc. Your attorney or accountant or even yourself can all be part of that. Again, you're buying a gas station, the guy claims he sells 100,000 gallons a month, right? That's pretty traditional. Well, number 3 would be physical inspection, would be go in your car, count how many cars came. You can't fake that. Number 4 would be review documents. Well, every time you ever see those big trucks that deliver gas to the underground pumps? You guys ever seen that? Well, every time it's going to be a receipt. Go over the last year, count every receipt, and just check, just add up. Do you really get 100,000 gallons in delivery over the past month? Licenses, check. Do they have an up-to-date license to own a business, to sell whatever it is they're selling? Okay, that's obviously going to vary, and you may need a lawyer or consultants, but again, it shouldn't be too crazy. Yeah, this is a big process. Now you guys are understanding why you have to be very motivated. This can't just be buying your business, not this easy get rich quick scheme. It is not. It can be a fantastic way to build wealth, to really acquire wealth and build on that wealth, especially if you're going to grow that business. But it's not a quick thing, get rich quick scheme. There's a lot of work, and you got to be very motivated to do it. Okay. Very good. Okay, so now you're doing your due diligence, and you're always going to find small things here and there. But the question is, what happens if you find something that's significantly different? The guy claimed he has 200,000 in profits, and it looks like it's 130,000 or something. Just big differences that makes you really scared. So you do have a couple of options. You can either change the contract terms. For example, maybe you'll pay for most of the business now, and the rest will be a loan to the seller. You can simply walk away. I'm sorry, sir, you're not honest. You claim that the business has 200,000 earnings, but we only see 150,000. That's just too much of a problem for us. It's too big. Walk away. But again, this is one of the risks of going down this road. What if this happens after 3 months, 4 or 5 months of dealing with the business? You may have technically wasted that time. So it is a bit of a risk, and even pay legal and accounting fees. If this happens 2 or 3 times, you're not going to be too happy. So that is one of the risks in this whole process. Just to be honest with you guys. You can also, of course, change the price. So if the business price was based on earnings of 200,000 a year, and you really looks like it's only 160 legitimate earnings, okay, maybe change the price a bit, lower the price, and that may still work. So those are the main thing options. Now, if fortunately you didn't find any major problems that really bug you out too much, that really worry, concern you, and you're happy to go ahead, great. You have already agreed on the price, so you will set a closing date that works for both parties. That will be the first step you do. You will tell the broker you're okay, and this is when you want to close. Now, this is when you really need to have the money coming in for you. You want to call all your investors. You want to update them on your process. You found the business. These are the numbers. I'm happy with it. I've done my research. And you will ask them to literally pay you the money into the bank account where it's supposed to go, so that you can have that money ready for closing date. Request them to send over the money. You will then, as soon as you can, start the SBA loan approval process. Once you have the business and the due diligence is checking out, because this can take 30 days plus. I don't remember the exact number, but it can take a while. It's not like a one-day turnaround. So therefore, you want to get that early so it doesn't delay closing. So hopefully your investors come through, your SBA loan doesn't make any holdups, everything goes good. You give them all the documents you need, and then we head on to closing, right? Closing will take about a day. There's a lot of documents to be signed and agreements. You and your lawyer will be there. Many documents will be signed, all the purchase agreements, documents. And basically, assuming you manage to do that, after that, you will own the business. Congrats. So now what happens? Okay. So training. Let's talk about training. Just quickly Do that. Click. All right, nearly there, guys. So you bought the business. In the purchase agreement that you sign on closing day, that's going to be like thick as anything. Part of that, and this is standard industry practice, the seller is going to train you. You can't be expected just to come in day one and know how to do everything. And generally, it's about 90 days, unless it's really a simpler business. If it's so most people will do it. That if they're very serious, they're going to tell their boss. No, because you are. That's the difference. It's assuming the business makes. Give me a business. Give me a number that the business might make a year. Throw out a number. Oh, come on, let's do a bit smaller than, huh? Okay. Well, let's say you manage to acquire that. Let's just, for argument's sake, January the 1st. By the end of that month, you as the owner are entitled to the monthly amount. What is 300K divided by 12? Something like 30,000 or so a little bit less. You should have into your bank account $20,000 to live off because you now own it. The second you own it, you get the profits, right? And this is why it's better. This route can be better than a startup business. A startup business takes years and years to even make money and years and years to you to get session. Day one of closing, you get owner's earnings. You're the owner. You bought it. Well, that's why there's profit. No, only some of it. Some of it goes to paying off the loans, which, by the way, eventually go away. The rest you keep, depending on how much worked out. Now, let's talk about training. Generally, it's about 90 days, unless it's a very simple business. It's a very simple laundromat. Guess it's something very simple. It may take a few weeks. It may take a month. Might be a month or two. Okay, but at a certain point, your training will be done and you should know really how to operate day-to-day the business. Then part of the agreement is that the seller will be available for advice via a phone call, usually for up to 12 months. And he's like a paid consultant. He'll get, a certain amount per hour because he's basically wiped his hands clean. He sold it. He trained you in. Now, if you want to consult him, that's you got to pay him, as if he was like a business consultant. And that'll be part of the agreement, something reasonable, maybe $50 an hour or something like that. Okay. Takeover. Apologies again. Just quickly do this. 2-3 more slides, and then we will have completed this. Anyone have any questions at all? So then, okay, good. I'll just do all the transitions for you guys. 2 slides left. Okay. So the seller has done his training, and throughout that process, you will learn the processes and how to run the business. You'll meet the employees. It could be you could have 0 employees potentially. It could be 1, could be 2, could be 20, depending on what type of business you're buying. And start coming into contact with the major suppliers and your customers and your vendors. Okay. Now, depending on what your plan was, either you're going to run it yourself, no problem. This might be the time after maybe 3 months, once you know how to run the business, now you can hire a manager if that was part of your plan, or if you want to, and train them, right? The seller of the business has trained you. Now, if you want, you can hire a manager, or you can hire out some of the work. There's virtual bookkeeping companies, there's all these types of virtual companies that will do some of the work for you. They hire people in overseas countries, so you can also do that. And if you want, now is the time to hire a manager after about 3 months. But ideally, you should know how to hire the manager, because if one day that manager leaves, and they probably will at one point, until you can get another manager, you, as a business owner, should know how to run your business. Pretty much A to Z. You will generally hold off on any major changes for at least 6 to 12 months, because you really want to know. It's very easy to start going in and say changing things. Let's do this way. Let's build that way. Let's change the law. And then you realize the guy for the last 30 years has done it that way because he knew what he was doing. There's a specific reason for that. So you want to wait until you fully understand. And that will probably be at least 6 to 12 months before you start making any major changes. Unless, of course, you bought a turnaround business that was failing and you had a plan. Then you got to start changing things straight away. Or you really want to implement a major growth strategy straight away. That will be different. But in general cases, if you're buying a business just to run as is, maybe improve a bit, just hold off for a good few months until you really understand, see how things go. And then with the seller's advice here and there, you'll start to implement your changes, your strategies, if you have any, after about 6 to 12 months. You may wish to start making process improvements. For example, and it's really going to depend on the system, but a lot of entrepreneurs will buy a business for 30 years, had outdated systems, inefficiencies, you will make it a lot more efficient. You might want to refresh the store, paint job, redesign, improve the website. You might have a lot of businesses that could go online. That might be part of it, but you wouldn't want to do that 2 months into it because it's too soon. You're still learning the business, still learning how it goes. Wait about 6 to 12 months, depending on the case. You might want to improve customer service. For example, let's just give you an example right here. You may have a coin laundromat that you're sick of collecting the quarters. Okay, you can go to card, right? A physical payment card. You wouldn't want to do that straight away, but that might be one of your improvements. You may want to improve any elements of the business. Maybe they're doing the accounting in a sloppy way or in an inefficient way. That might be one example of bookkeeping or anything like that. If growth was part of the plan, maybe you bought a marketing company, a lawn mowing company, something that was really going to grow. Now's the time to start doing that. Whatever your strategy is, now is the time to start doing that once you feel like you've mastered that business. And again, you wouldn't want to do that until you really are at the 6 to 12 month mark. And then you are off to the races. All right, it looks like that's it. So pretty much that would be the overall picture of how to go about the process of searching for, investigating, buying, and maybe even growing, improving a small to medium business. If anyone has any questions. Anyone have any questions right off the bat or not? Okay, no problem. We will stop the recording. Stop share.